here with Daniel Schomburg and Claudette Schomburg, correct?
Right.
Had to slow it down so I can say it correctly. And we're going to do a little brief interview. I hope I am in the frame. If not, that's going to be a problem. Claudette, first of all, thank you for allowing me to come in your home and have this interview with you. I'm really excited about diving into this a little bit more. We've had a little bit of conversation before this interview started, and when I tell you I'm excited to talk to them, I am excited to talk to them. So Claudette, if you don't mind, just give us a little introduction about yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself to New Day listeners.
Okay, hi, I'm Claudette Schomburg. I am a lot of things. I pride myself in being a strong, independent woman, but I'm also a daughter of a Vietnam veteran.
Okay.
I am African American and Korean, and so I come from a bicultural household, and I am also married to my husband Daniel. We are raising our niece and nephew, and I guess we are very cultural household, being in an interracial relationship, and also that it may be out of the norms of society, as it's not a typical, what would you call it?
It's not a typical household.
Not a typical household. We're very diverse group.
And that's what we wanted to talk about, diversity, and just hearing people tell their story from their perspective. Now, when I'm coming in, I've actually known Claudette and Daniel for maybe, I know you a little bit longer, maybe 3 years, 4 years, maybe longer.
It's about 4 years.
It's been with you,
For me, yeah, with me and her, it's 4 years.
Oh my gosh, I've known you for 4 years? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
but
the
it's
time
been
goes
about-
by so
It's
fast.
been about 7 years. For
Okay. And so I met Claudette through the Celebrating and Strengthening Families program in Savannah. She was one of the volunteers for the program. And just what you see now, she's like lowered, like on 2. She's usually on 10. Just a bubbly, sweet personality, and I immediately connected with her. And then she brought her husband to volunteer as well. Daniel, I keep wanting to say Danny. That's her nickname for him. I want to say Danny. That's not my nickname. But Daniel to the program, and so I got a chance to meet him as well. And so I wanted you guys to tell, because we're not only talking about diversity in the sense of race, but we're also talking about diversity in the sense of ethnic equality and sexual orientation. And I know that's something that you all were willing to share with me, and I really appreciate that. And if you can just, we've talked a little bit, if you can just kind of share with the listeners what you were sharing with me about how you kind of knew what was going on with you.
Okay, so I've been asked before, Claudette, what's your sexual orientation? And I always hated that question because there's that stigma where someone's saying you have to either be straight, or you're either gay or a lesbian or maybe bisexual, which is seen as a really, really bad thing. But I never identified with any of those things because I've always just loved people.
Okay.
And when someone asked, I had been asked to share my story before, and I thought a good starting point was something from one of my first memories when I was 5.
Okay.
I was playing with 2 of my girlfriends in the neighborhood, and that day they just came over to our house. None of our guy friends were around, but we wanted to play house. So we were like, we didn't want to be housewives with husbands at work, so we just like, you know what, we'll just play wife and wife. And it would just seem completely normal and natural. And when my mom found out, she was really, really upset.
Okay.
And she made me feel feelings of shame. She said I brought shame to the family.
Okay.
Mind you, my mom is Korean. She grew up during the Korean War in a very traditional household.
Okay.
So their values are very, very strict and also very black and white. It's either right or wrong. Right or wrong.
Okay.
And so I remember not understanding, and I actually got really mad at my mom because I did not understand. I said, "What is the big problem?" And that was the first time that it clicked that I may be different, how I view the world.
Okay.
And so I think when it was probably in 2012. I reached out to a really good friend of mine who's very active in the LGBTQ community. She started a publication that was to bridge the gap because there's a lot of divide even within the LGBTQ community. Lesbians what is that word called? Discriminate against those who are transgender. Gays discriminate against those who are transgender, and then there are white gays that discriminate against black gays. Like, it's really just unreal.
Wow, I'm confused right now. You just
yeah.
okay.
Sorry.
So.
I was going on a bit. So I joined her project because I felt that it was something that needed to be addressed and a powerful story. And talking to her and meeting people who identify in multiple different ways, I can't even tell you now, like, all the different ways. I realized that gender expression is so much more than just I'm a male or I'm a female, or it's not so binary. And I connected with that because I've always viewed the world as more than that, more diverse, more intricate. And so I really connected with this project. And that's when I learned from this group of intellectual scholars. These are people who've studied it and have PhDs in it.
Right.
And they taught me about what a pansexual was, because they asked me, well, what's your orientation? Because we had to do a workshop project. And I was like, I have no idea. I'm very uncomfortable with that label.
Okay.
We were talking about labels, and I said, I don't like labels. And so they said, well, have you ever heard of pansexual? Because that sounds a lot like you. And pansexual is someone who does not view gender. They just see a person kind of like a person's soul, and they connect with people like on a personality, on the intellectual side, and they just feel love for everybody, no matter how society labels them. And I connected with that because that's exactly how I've always been.
And just to give the listeners just a little insight, when I first stepped here and she said pansexual, I had to call ignorance. I didn't know. I mean, I've heard of the term before, but I thought, could I be pansexual, meaning that I love people, and she said, no, sweetie, it's intimate, in your intimate relationships. So they helped me to understand a little bit more, because I do try to accept people and just meet them where they are. But when it comes to who I guess intimately connected to, attracted to, is not on the level that Claudette was explaining. So just give you a little bit more. Now I think I know something, so I want you to know something. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So sometimes it's hard for me to explain that because it's very connected to my personality as well, because I'm very much a people person already. But that's how I felt I could, I guess, allow someone, if they felt that they needed to know my sexual orientation, if they felt that it was their business, and if I felt that I could share that with them, that's the label I could give them that I would be comfortable with.
Okay.
So.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And I had a question, but I want to kind of lead that to the end about your mom and how she now relates to you. But I want you to answer it now. Okay. Look, Daniel, because I don't want to call you Danny. I don't want the cutesy Danny. Daniel. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, I grew up. I was born and raised here in Hinesville.
In Hinesville, okay.
And my mother and father met a while back. They was actually partying together. And then, but as growing up, my father and my mother, they eventually got a divorce. I don't know the whole truth on that, on like what exactly happened.
Okay.
But so I never grew up with my dad. It was always just my mom, myself, and my two sisters. And then and as growing up, also I had like one father figure, and that was my grandfather, and that was just about it. So growing up, it was just mainly, me taking care, making sure my sisters were good, making sure my mom's good, everybody, okay, are you safe? Are you safe? And as I started growing up, I started realizing that, I like females. I don't know why I like females, but I like females. I don't really care for the intimate part of men. I like the ladies.
Okay. And
as growing up, I kept, people started calling me, saying that I was a lesbian. That bothered me. Because I looked at myself in the mirror and I'm like, that term doesn't fit. What do you mean I'm a lesbian? I'm not a lesbian. And I had trouble with that. And my mom told me a story one time when I was young. She told me that I walked out of my bedroom for some reason. And for some reason I had on, she said, I don't know where I got it from, but she said I had on boys' underwear, and I was walking around as if I had, as if I was a boy.
Okay.
Walking around outside, playing in the dirt, playing in the grass. And then, as I got a little bit older, I realized that, I don't see myself as a female as well.
Okay.
I only see myself as a guy, and so that's where that part came in. And when that hit my family, because me myself with my family, we were very close.
Okay.
They know every odds and ends throughout this house, throughout our relationship. You know, it's just how our family intertwines together. When they found out that, you know, that I'm a transgender person, they had a lot of trouble with that. They were more accepting of me coming out as a lesbian
Wow.
than they were of me being a transgender person.
Why do you think that is? Or what that was? Is it still the situation?
Not as much. I think part of them are still struggling with it, but they're trying to be respectful. They're trying to understand, and they're forcing. I feel like they're forcing themselves in a sense to make sure they're putting the he pronouns and making sure that they're being supportive. But I don't think a part of them. I don't think that they understand.
Right.
They grew up in a time, you know, because they also grew up here in Hinesville, and when it comes to Hinesville, it's kind of closed-minded a lot, and you don't get to see a lot of diversity in this town. So I think that's the reason why they didn't accept it at first, and they were struggling with it so much, is because they don't understand. And then no matter how much I was trying to explain it to them, I think their own biasness and their own judgment cut themselves off from being educated during that moment.
Okay. And I guess I can ask you now too, Claudette, is your family more accepting? Like, far as your mom, I can imagine your sister is okay, you know. Maybe not? Oh, okay, that's it. So I get for assuming. Okay, go ahead.
So, how I view things, but especially when it comes to gender expression, is that for me, I know who Danny is and who he is, and I introduced him to my family as who he is, because I felt that it was no one's business to know what he was born as people have to say. I don't believe that's anyone's business, because when you meet someone and you get to know them, you don't ask them what do they look like with their clothes off.
This is true.
You just meet them and get to know them. Like, you never, like, well, maybe never, but me, I never, when I meet someone, think, oh, I wonder what you look like without your clothes on. Like, you know, it's like, I wonder what's underneath your pants. You know, I don't think about that. You just get to know the person. It's like, hey, this is a pretty cool person. I like to hang out with them more. I think my kids would love to be around their kids, things like that. And so when my mom first met him, she fell in love with him. She's like, oh, I finally have a son, and they really had like a bond, kind of like a mother-son bond, and that really made me feel good, because my father had recently passed away, and I know that gave my mom some comfort, because my mom was pointing out to me things like, oh, he does this like your dad did, that's so crazy, and personality-wise, and she's like, of course you would pick someone who's like your dad, and things like that. But
wow, that's interesting. That your mom went from like, no, you can't play house this way, to comparing Daniel to your father.
Well, when it comes to her mother, you know, like Claudia said, we did not tell her mother that I was born female and identify as male now.
Okay.
So when I met her, she knew me as who I am today, a male, doing the male business of the house, things like that. She, at the time, she did not know that I was born female.
Okay.
We did not let her know that.
Okay. And can I just tell you guys from an honest perspective, when I first met Daniel, I didn't know how to. Yeah, you probably could feel it on me. I'm like, I don't know what to say, because one part of me is like, well, man, okay, let me be real. Can I be real?
Go ahead.
One part of me was like, is it a woman? Is that a man? That's not a man. No, that's a woman. And I kept doing that, so I didn't know what to do. Now, I wanted to respect what you were saying, because you were using he. This is my boyfriend. I'm like, so I just didn't know what to do. So a lot of times I just wanted to be kinder. I wanted to be more open, but you're right, I didn't understand. Yeah. So I kind of understand how your family will feel, and they're closer to you. They've been I just met you in a matter of minutes, so I don't have the background. I didn't grow up with you, none of that. So just imagine someone who lives with you, and they know from whence you come and where you are now, and they're trying to just figure that all out in their mind. Because even someone who met you right then, even though you clearly identified, you know, I didn't know what to do, and I didn't want to be disrespectful. You know, I didn't want to bring my own biases to the table, but I have to admit, I was confused, because I had known you for a while, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe Claudette doesn't know, you know. So it was just a weird, really. I went through this whole thing, but maybe I should tell Claudette, you know. But it was really weird. But but the basis of how I treated you was that I wanted to respect you. Whether it came across as smoothly as I wanted it to all the time.
Very smooth. You were good. You did good.
Okay. I thought I was like a bumbling fool around you because I felt so. Uncomfortable is not the word. I think more confused because you didn't make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You seem like a very nice person. So it wasn't that like, oh, get away from me. It was just I don't know how to.
You didn't know how to
address
approach me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And do you find that often, or is that kind of, or do you not pay attention to it, or what?
I kind of threw away the ignorance, you know, like I was telling Claudia, I was like, honey, have we ever been discriminated against based on being a biracial couple? And she was like, well, yeah, we get stared at all the time. I'm like, well, I've been blissfully ignorant to it then because I don't realize it. But yeah, when it comes, like when you said something about my parents, you know, for them, what I thought was just so funny, when they couldn't grasp me being a transgender person, what I thought was so funny is that all growing up, they kept calling me a little boy.
Really?
Like, what are you doing playing with the dirt? Are you a little boy? You know, and they, like going back in memories, you know how you sit down with your parents or something and then, you know, they start throwing out, oh my gosh, do you remember this one time? They used to do that all the time, and my mom would just sit there and she'd be like, oh, my little boy, you know, and then when I came out and then the reaction I got from them, I was shocked. I was like, really?
It's true. We already preached this.
Yeah, because
we just done.
They would tell me stories like he hated having a shirt on, especially if it was summer, and all of his friends, and he had all boyfriends, like little guy friends, and they'd go out there and play war and
climb on trees.
Yeah, and he's like, why do I have to wear a shirt? They don't have to wear a shirt.
Wow.
Yeah. So before puberty hit, of course, I would sit there, I would throw off my shirt, and I'll go run and play in the dirt and play with my guys. You know, it's just I never thought nothing of it until puberty hit, and that's when I started noticing that I'm just a little bit different than my guy friends over there.
Right.
Because of course, you know, I've never seen anything below the belt. It's always been just, you know, the chest because we take our shirts off playing. But yeah, I never noticed a difference until puberty hit, and that's when my mom started forcing me to wear things that made me feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
I didn't like the bras. I didn't like these. I didn't like the shirts on me. I mean, Georgia's hot. It's blazing hot outside, and we're stuck with shirts on. That's not fair to me. And then, so going up, I had a lot of conflict between myself. You know, well, I don't feel like I'm a female. I'm not sitting on. I look at myself in the mirror. As soon as I got the shower, and I look, and I'm just like, this just can't be me. This just can't be it. And I would hate it. I would hate it going into the women's bathroom because, you know, the way I dressed before, I was this punk rock skater wearing the baggy pants and the baggy clothes everywhere, and people would walk in and they'll sit there and they looked at me like, aren't you in the wrong bathroom? And I felt like saying, you're right, I am in the wrong bathroom, but there's nothing I could do about it. That'd be in my head, but you know, verbally I would have to say, well, no, I'm a female.
Okay.
And I hated it.
So you actually had to identify.
For a long time, I did identify as female because I wasn't understanding what was going on, and I didn't feel comfortable at the time to talk to anybody about it. And I actually did not come out as being transgender until I met Claude.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's the only one. I mean, I had a relationship before her, and me and this lady was in a relationship for 5 years. And at the time, I was still identifying as a lesbian.
Okay.
Even though, you know, all this other stuff was going on internally, I just never expressed it outwardly.
And just got to interject right there. I kind of understand, but can you just explain it a little bit more? Because I claim ignorance when I need to. How do I say it? It's kind of all the same, but I know it's not. So what's the define?
Did something happen?
Yeah, the phone. When I heard the phone ring, I knew it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. He was there with one of his friends hanging out, and when I saw him, I was like, he's good looking.
Right.
And I was like, I just remember that, and that's when I first met him, and we played like a game of quarters. I've never heard of it before, but it's you do something with the quarters across the bar table anyway. And so that's when I first met him, and then he had a party. I didn't realize this was a I'm single again party, but he had a party at his house that his sister invited me to, and that's when we had our first conversation, and then we ended up talking all night long, and even after people left.
Everybody had left for the night, it was a house full of people, and once everybody had left, it was just me and her, and we stayed on the couch, and we talked all night.
About everything.
Wow.
It was like really just mind-blowing, because I was like, he's so smart. We talked about everything from politics to
the world.
And traveling and our experiences and the people that we knew, and so that was really nice to be able to connect to someone like that. And so that it was, for me, it was magical. But I'm a romantic, so I can get cheesy.
Okay.
So,
yeah, you can.
So that's how our whirlwind romance started. Because after that, we talked every day since that day.
We did not separate hardly ever. I think we separated like where she had to go back to her mom's house, maybe not even a handful of times. Because if anything, she was always at my house, always hanging out.
Okay, and it goes back to the other question: what made you again identify? Now I'm not identifying as lesbian. I'm identifying now as transgender.
When I was with my the person I was with before Claudette, I remember laying in bed, and I was just like, something's going on, and I kept tossing and turning with it, and finally when I started figuring it all out and understanding who I was, that's when I told the person I was with at the time. I was like, I said, there's just no way, I identify as a male. I am a man. I know I'm a man. And she told me that was disgusting. Okay. And she said, if I wanted to be with a man, that's what I would have been with. And she left.
Okay, so is that that's a kind of common thing within lesbian relationship, that they truly want someone who identifies as a female?
I can't say that,
okay,
because everybody's a little bit different. There is a couple that I do know that they have been together for 15 years. And throughout those 15 years, they both identified as lesbians, and they was in a lesbian relationship. And then just recently, that person came out as being a transgender person. So for them, that person is like, well, you know what? I don't care. I still love you, whether you're my girlfriend or my boyfriend, or whether you're my husband or my wife. I still love you. So I think it depends on the person.
Okay,
yeah.
Makes sense.
But so after she left, I think it was maybe a month later, I had met Claude, and throughout that month, I was working out a lot of conflict with myself. And the very first night when me and her had, not the very first night, the first night that she came over to the house and she stayed after everybody had left, we were sitting on my 1997 Buick LeSabre, that old thing, and we was talking, and I told her, I was like, Claudette, I'm a transgender person, I'm a trans man. And she was like, I don't care.
Oh no, my words was okay, because because it didn't bother me. But what also helped is that I didn't know what that was like 5 months prior. So if he had said that 5 months prior, I'd be like, well, I don't understand. What does that mean? Okay. So it's something that was new for me too, that I wasn't like an expert at or knew a lot of people or whatever. But I just was like, okay, because it didn't bother me. Okay. And because I kind of already knew too.
Okay.
Because how he presents himself, it was just, to me, it was like a no-brainer. I was like, he's a he. And so I actually, he didn't know it at the time, but I asked his brother-in-law and his sister what gender pronoun should I use. Okay. Because I had a crush on him and I didn't want to mess that up. And so I asked them on the sly so I could, not, ruin the future dating chances. And, and they gave me the wrong pronoun, but I didn't realize that it's because he hadn't talked to his family about it yet and things like that. And so I didn't realize how big a moment it was when he told me for him.
Wow.
Because besides my now ex, she was the only person I told besides her. So it was a pretty big moment.
And a totally different response as well.
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, when she sat there and she said that, I was like, I didn't know how to take it. I was like, well, what do I do with that now? All right, well, I guess that's that, And but she's helped me with a lot of stuff. Being a transgender person and living in this kind of society is hard. And there's been times where I didn't want to commit suicide. And there was times where I was having a lot of conflict with myself because I was very angry because I wasn't understanding what was going on still at the same time, and I had and trying to talk to her about it because she knows a whole lot of more people than I ever have who has either gone through something like this or who knows somebody. So she was able to help me and to bring me back to who I'm supposed to be and bring me back to the right mindset, to who I am today.
Okay.
So give a lot of credit to her for who I am and even for being here, because I do truly feel that if it wasn't for Claudette, I don't think I'll be here.
And what was the, for lack of a better term, what was the pressure? What was the weight on you that thought, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to end my life. What was it? Was it outside or was it internal?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
A little bit of both, because you just had the biggest rejection of your life from somebody that you spent 5 years of your life with. Mm-hmm. That you sat there, you've planned your whole entire life with it, between getting married and kids and all this, and that person just threw the biggest hammer in your face. That was hard. Mm-hmm. That was really hard. Okay. And then when it came to my family and how they were not accepting it at first, that was another thing that was very hard, because my family is very close. I mean, we are so tight knit. And if they can't accept me, that made it so hard. Because going over to their house and they're sitting there calling me female pronouns or calling me by the name that I don't go by. And so it's just, a lot of it was hard. And a lot of it was also internal, because I was like, I don't want to be this way if it's going to be this hard. I got to stop. But you can't stop, because you can't stop who you are. And it's like sitting here saying, I don't want red hair no more. It's not going to work, because you're going to have it either way.
Unless you diet like me.
Unless you diet, yeah.
I get what you're saying, though. I feel you.
But yeah.
Yeah. And so speaking, and we're going to switch gears just a little bit. So how is your family? I know you said your mom met Daniel.
My mom met him as who he is.
But she knows now, right?
She knows now.
She understands now.
But it wasn't in the way that it was really done in kind of like a hateful way, not from my mom, but surprisingly from my sister. My sister, you know her, and I don't want to bash her, but I'm just going to be honest. She is normally very open-minded and very progressive about
That's
things.
why I said, I assume, yeah.
She is, but this is one thing that she was not familiar with. And although she wasn't uncomfortable with Danny, and she wasn't uncomfortable with viewing him as who he is and saying the pronouns and outwardly, she had an issue that, because she was my best friend, and so I told her everything. If I had any struggles, and she also knew of Danny from a mutual friend of how he identified beforehand.
Okay.
And so she had a problem that my mom didn't know who he identified beforehand before we got together. And so she was really, really angry with me because she thought that I was deceiving my mother.
Okay.
And so that, of course, is the culture contest, because she's like, you're not understanding where mom will be coming from. She's going to view it as you've been lying. I'm like, well, I'm not lying, because this is who he is.
Okay.
I didn't bring home a stranger. I brought her someone who was going to show her who he is, and this is who he is. I didn't bring home someone and lie to you. Me bringing home and saying this is like my girlfriend would be a lie.
Okay.
Because this is my husband, but at the time this is my boyfriend, and I love him, and he loves me, and he, and my mom had a very close bond. And so, whatever issues my sister had, we haven't yet hashed it out. But she was just so stuck on that, and she got mad at me about something, and because she was mad at me, she told my mother. In the worst possible way, because my mom doesn't speak English fluently. She understands it, but she won't understand this. Like, you have to explain it to her in her
just
language.
Culturally, I just imagine that it's just not as common, I guess. Like culturally,
it's not
from her.
Yeah,
from where
she's
she grew
older.
up.
Like maybe a younger person
Yeah.
culturally understands so much more. But just like trying to explain to my grandma, it may not even have anything to do with just being Asian, but just being older, trying to explain that to
a
my
whole
grandma.
different era.
She's from a different era, but also a different language, and also culture-wise, because in Korea it's very formal. You respect your elders, and you speak to them differently. Like in Korea, there's an informal Korean language and a formal, and you always use the formal with your elders. Like there's just a different way of your demeanor, and so I had to teach him that too, by the way.
Right.
And so,
Well, you was in Joy Luck Club moment.
Yeah, I was sitting there being thrown into that. I was like,
so for her to just do it in such a way that was insensitive from my mother, and it came from like a hateful place, like Claudette's been lying to you, and things like that. and she did it on my dad's death anniversary, which also culturally is really bad because especially since my dad had, you know, I think at that point it was his 3rd death anniversary. It's still a time of mourning, and that day is full of sadness. And that day is normally when you do ceremonies and things like that. And she did it over the phone. And so there was then that lack. So it wasn't done in a loving way and to be understanding way. She did it because she was angry at me and wanted my mom to be angry
Basically
with me
to get Clint back.
Yeah, and so.
How's your mom resolved that since then?
We kind of, to be honest, I don't think we really fully have. I mean, me and her mom did have a conversation, but it wasn't a conversation about that. It was a conversation on how can we get Claudette and her sister to be sisters again.
Okay.
How can we get those two to start talking?
But I didn't talk to my mother for probably 3 months because of what she said. Because my mom was so angry, and she wouldn't allow me to speak. Mind you, this is over the phone. My mom was also, with the death of my dad, suffering from anxiety and depression, and so she threatened to commit suicide and blame me. And she said, "Don't you dare bring that girl over here, or if you do, I'm gonna tear her clothes off." And you know, and that is really violent. That's hateful. That would be a hate crime if she actually did it. And it's scary. You don't ever threaten to do that to somebody. And so I didn't talk to my mom 3 months, and she is the one that reached out to me, says she missed me, she wants to have a relationship with me. So my mom says that she loves me, she accepts me for who I am, and he doesn't understand my mom, but she says she talked to him and said that she loves him, and that she is accepting of him. But he didn't understand that from, I guess, the conversation, or maybe she was just telling me that.
Even though we did have that small conversation, it wasn't too much of that. And even now, when me and you go over to her house, it's not the same feeling no more.
Yeah, that bond is gone.
It is, and it's not. I want it back because I would love. I mean, her mom is just a cute little short thing. She's just so adorable. You just squeeze her, But I want it back, but it's not going to come back because of what happened and how it happened. There's just emotionally, it's impossible.
And I guess that goes right into like, how do you deal with the opposition? Because it's going to always be opposition. Like even right now. And I can imagine that people who are friends with me are like, Angel, what are you doing? Are you compromising? Because, like I said, I'm like how you said you were dealing with things internally. I'm dealing with things internally. Not to say that I'm trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? Abandon my beliefs. But I just got to think, like, God, and I just be real. God, there has to be a way. It's a whole group of people out here that in my faith we don't touch, we don't talk to. Why? Why? Now, that doesn't mean that in this conversation I'm going to convert you or you're going to convert me or whatever. It doesn't mean that. But in this conversation, we can come to some understanding and we can come to some mutual respect for each other, even if we don't agree. And so, so there may be people who watch this and say, oh, well, Angel, you're compromising. Why are you sitting there? And I would have to deal with that within myself. I'm good, but I have to deal with that. So, but how do you deal with the opposition, especially from the loved ones, people that's so very close to you?
I don't know. I mainly just talk to Claude about it, and we kind of work it out through there. There's not.
I was really angry with his family for a long time because I come from a very small family. It was just my dad, my mom, my sister, and I have extended family, but I wasn't close. And his family's like a huge clan. Like there's so many of them, and
little gang members.
Yeah, and because he has always been the one where they can call at any moment to do things for him. He's always been there for him. It really hurt me to see how they had rejected such a big part of him, and kind of disregarded how he would feel, and they're only worried about what this would look like to them and to the people that they know. And I felt it was selfish, but that was me not having that understanding mindset that they've known him for.
I was just thinking that, like, putting yourself in their shoes. Because, like I said, it was challenging for me at first. And not because I wanted to be hateful or, I wanted to be disrespectful, but because it just was confusing. I didn't know how to approach it. And so there were times where I know I kind of, at least you said I didn't, so I guess I'm smoother than I thought I was. But I felt like, because this is the thing with me. As a human, I don't want to approach you. Just say, for example, I'll give an easier example. My son has a prosthetic eye. And so one thing, when he first had lost his eye at 5, he would always shy away because he didn't want people to look at him directly.
Oh.
You know, even if they wanted to be, you know, okay with it, he was automatically shielding himself. And so I felt like I was doing it. Like I was, you know how you try to look away, but you can't. I felt within myself that I was making you feel that way. Like I'm trying to, I see the eye, but I want to look away, you know?
Yeah.
Something like that. And so I felt uncomfortable because I don't want to treat somebody like that. Whether it's a disability or something going on with them, I want to be able to say, you know what, I don't understand it. Like one of the people we worked with, she had you remember her, she had that birthmark. And I thought, well, what's wrong with her skin? She said, oh, it's just a birthmark. After that, I never looked at it the same. But for a while, I kept seeing myself, you know, look away, let me look away. And so I felt like when I met you, I was doing that. Looking, but not looking. You know, looking away.
Yeah.
And I felt uncomfortable within myself because I never want to treat somebody like that. Make somebody feel bad. And so I guess putting myself in the family's shoes, it is a lot to deal with, you know? And that was just, again, we saw each other for 2 hours that day. And I still was like, you know, I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah.
You know?
And so he is like the epitome of patience.
Right.
And so I learned a lot from him on how to step back and look at from other people's eyes. Because
Right.
I don't know if it's because of having my mom and my dad growing up. They're both hotheads and very like bulldozers, but that was my personality. It was well, I view the world should be this way. I feel like this is the right way, and this is how it's gonna be. And if you're not gonna be that nice, then or be just like how I view it, then you know I'm gonna tell you how to get there. So I was very just like bam, bam, and so that's. I guess I can be kind of combative to very, you know, old grandmother and, you know, and things like that.
A poor grandma.
Yeah. So, you know, I had to take a step back and take a deep breath and really be understanding and come from a place of love. And so, surprisingly, you know, you think that love is like a feeling that comes easy, but I learned to love people.
Trust me, it doesn't.
I learned to truly love people from him. Like that's what he taught me, and to be less judgmental about things. That can go on about a lot of aspects of life, but
to answer your question, is probably I guess that is how we dealt with it.
yeah,
Understanding, putting ourselves in their shoes, and also talking about it within ourselves. To be honest, mainly, I do have my sister, you know, my baby sister to talk to, but when it comes to certain things like this, me and her is all we have. And that's when things get hard, or if we don't understand something, or you know, if there's something political going on, me and her will lean on each other, and me and her have two separate views a lot of the times. Like for this election, we were voting for 2 different people,
Right.
but we were still able to sit here and have a good conversation and talk about what we like and dislike about these 2 candidates, and still go to bed at night, I love you, and not having another second thought over it.
yeah,
So
no anger or you know things like that.
And that's a good segue into the next question. Like, how do you view the political climate right now with the administration that's in place right now? And I feel how I feel about the administration, but we're not here to disrespect the administration. So we're going to talk from a place of respect about the administration. But I do want to hear, how do you feel about the political
we do not
climate?
agree with them.
Okay.
She personally was going for Hillary. I was going for Sanders. I believe that one of those 2 would have been better fit, but the administration right now we do not agree with. We feel that.
Yeah, all of us have to go woosah.
Yeah, I have to think about this one. I don't want to disrespect or
Yeah.
you know using kind of language that somebody might find offensive.
Because of my personality, I'm very sensitive, emotional. I know it's cliche. I have come to accept that about myself, and I internalize things, and so I have been avoiding the news, and I get it from him. He gives me the little tidbits that I need to know, because otherwise I'll get consumed by it. So I focus on the positive things. So what I read up on is what people are doing to resist and to speak out. And so that's been how I've been connected to that. That's how I've been dealing with it, because I am fearful, because not only because I am a woman, and already we've been struggling with women's health care and also maternal health care.
Equality too.
And equality in healthcare, and then you go into outside of healthcare, equality in education and the workplace, and just society-wise, it's just so many layers of it, and I'm terrified because we just got married, and I would be just devastated if something would happen to either one of us and we are not having the equal rights that we're supposed to have as a married couple. And then also for our two kiddos, you know, I'm worried about already, for example, in school. Personally, I don't agree that politics should be in school. Like, I think it's inappropriate for a teacher to tell a child who they're voting for. And for example, Sean, he said that one of his teachers, they said that they all had their own election in the classroom, and the teacher said, well, I'm voting for Trump. And he came to us and she's like, does that mean she's a bad person? Because they now have iPad tablets at school, and when they go online, they see the news coverage, and they see, you know, he's read about Trump and the things he's said about people, and it's having that conversation with an 8-year-old about, he's like, but this man has said all these things, and my teacher says she's voting for him to, you know, things like that, and he's like, my best friend Marcellus is black. Does that mean we won't be able to play together anymore? Wow. And he was really worried about that because, you know, of course, past month has been Black History Month, and you know, and he gets so excited because he's like, because of, you know, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and you know, doing the research, he's like, me and Marcellus can be best friends, and we can play every day because he lives just down the road, and things like that. And
cutest little friendship.
Yeah, they're best friends, and so having this conversation with a kid so young because of that, it's frightening because that's becoming the norm. And I don't know if you've heard of Pantsuit Nation, but it's
does that have something to do with Hillary Clinton?
It started off that way, I think. I wasn't. Someone added me after the election, so I don't know what happened all before that. But the only things I noticed are stories of women talking about their kids and how they're affected by the election and things like that, and the stories that they've heard of other children coming to school saying things like "Go back to your own country," and these racist comments coming out of these children's mouth, and then hearing from my own kids that they're dealing with that hatred and that bullying has gotten worse, and that's frightening because how can I protect them from that if I'm worried about like our family? You know, it's and then you're just unsure of what's going to happen. Like, will we have health insurance to be able, if someone gets sick, like what's going to happen with that? That's a huge system, you know, that can crumble and then just be left standing. And what do? We're left with whatever medical bills that we're going to have to figure out how to pay. So it's like a whole bunch of things at once. And I know, and the thing is, I know that everyone is dealing with that. It doesn't matter if you're white, black, women, male, everyone's feeling that fear. And I have a friend who is white, and her and her husband have both acknowledged that they have been like so in the wrong. Like they didn't vote for Trump, but they feel like I should have used my voice more. Like they acknowledge that they have a place in society where people actually listen, that they can reach to parts of society that people of color can't because there's that barrier and prejudice. And so
disadvantages too.
And disadvantages, and so they recognize their privilege, and so they've been more and more active. Like I've never seen some of my friends here said I'll never get into politics. They are posting things and writing to their congressman.
And that to me is, if nothing else, there are people that obviously, and some of my friends as well, who support Trump. So it's not even about that, you know, for me. But what I do love about what's happening now, because I remember when I woke up the election night, I hadn't even looked at the outcome, and I just woke up and I just something came. I just felt dread all over me before I even looked at. I just woke up out of nowhere, And so I talked to my sister trust, my ride or dies, and I'm like, I'm angry, I'm upset, I can't believe this. And I was able to go to my church. My church is very diverse, and I was able to talk to my pastor and some of the church members about how I felt as an African American woman and what was going on in our country. But what I love about what's happening is the conversations are being had now. People are more involved. People like me, I consider myself not to be a very political person, but you better believe I'm finding out what's going on today, and not in the way of I'm just being nosy or I just want the shock value, but I really want to know what is happening in our country right now. And if nothing else, it's brought people to the table that would not have been at the table, would not have been interested at being at the table, and it's evoking conversations like this. Yep. Just the other day, I spoke to someone of the Muslim faith. And we had a very in-depth conversation. It came right back to this. Conversations are being had. People are wanting to cross barriers and lines that haven't been crossed before because, we all felt comfortable in our own little spot. What they call our safe place. We all had that, whether it was within our community, within our church, within our families, and nobody was really willing to cross over. Now we're seeing, look, let me talk to you about this. What's going on with your family? What's going on with my family? And we're finding more commonalities than we find differences. Mm-hmm. So if anything else, the movement is happening. Something's happening. Something's stirring. I would hate to think that it would be because of something negative that it does, but you know what? If it had to happen that way, so be it. Something's happening in our country and something is changing in our country right now. Mm-hmm. And I hope and pray for the good.
I know a lot of people are saying that this is causing a divide between people, and really like you just said, no, this is bringing people together. Yeah. This is bringing, like when I go to school, especially nowadays, we have a lot of women that are on my campus who are of Muslim faith, and I can't remember their dress attire. What's it called? What? Yeah. When they, all you see really is their eyes, and I find myself and I find others being a little bit more respectful, mm-hmm. and showing them just a tad bit more respect, because now we're seeing and we're understanding the discrimination that's going on against them, and we want to let them know, no, you're safe. Yeah. You're fine with us. If something's happening to you and I'm there, I'm gonna stand right next to you and I'm gonna help you. Right. I'm not gonna deal with it. Right. And there's a lot of people on my campus that are the exact same way now. Right. Because before it used to be okay, no, keep it quiet, like that's their business. But now, no, a lot of people are saying, no, we're done. Right. We're gonna stand up, we're gonna fight, and we're gonna fight for what's right. Right. And that's gonna be fighting to end this discrimination. We're fighting to end racism, fighting to end women's inequality, and anything else along the spectrum. We're all gonna fight. Right. And I believe that's happening. I believe the conversations are definitely happening. And when you look at any news report, and again, we're not specifically talking against the president, but mm-hmm. when you look at news report of any resistance movement, there's all types of people there. Mm-hmm. Different races, gender, ethnicity, they're all together, and they're all marching, and they're all speaking out, mm-hmm. and it's giving a voice to the voiceless, and people who have a voice but haven't spoken up, now they're finding their voice. So if nothing else, it's doing that. Mm-hmm. It's stirring the pot enough to do that, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's that part's really exciting. That's what I've been focusing my reading on, just to feel more not weighed down. Mm-hmm. Because we have good friends in Virginia. They're in Lynchburg, Virginia, where I went to college. Mm-hmm. Named Andy and Isaac, and they started the Lynchburg Diversity Center. Okay. And Lynchburg is also the city for Liberty University. And Liberty mm-hmm. University is
somewhat familiar.
It's a Christian
and
university.
It's under some kind of scrutiny for not wanting to be segregated. Not wanting to be unsegregated. That was years ago. Now I'm sure it's not segregated, but it was an issue years ago. They had to actually say, look, we're going to take your funding away if you don't segregate the school. That's my understanding. I just read about that. But
I didn't.
That was years ago, though.
I didn't hear about that, but that school has gone through some issues between religion and politics, because they're executive, but cultural-wise in the city, there's still a lot of racism in the city. From my understanding of what I have read about, still issues of police brutality mm-hmm. and racism and discrimination, but also it was not always a very LGBTQ friendly city either, and so but Isaac and Andy, oh my gosh, mm-hmm. they have really connected with the individuals within the city mm-hmm. and with the art space, and they have brought people who actually want cohesiveness and bringing people together regardless of their faith and things like that. And they are part of a church that actually accepts, embrace everybody. And this center, they have recently did an art exhibit, and the funds were going towards the Women's March or towards Trans Kids Lifeline and things like that. And they've been on radio stations, news stations, doing interviews about transgender rights and things like that. And they've received so much press lately. And for me, because when I went to school there, I went to a women's college, and the students at Liberty University were not very friendly to us. And Isaac actually went to Liberty.
Yeah, I remember him telling me about that. Yeah.
And he still loves his school because he says that students are not the president or whatever. But so much to talk about. Where was I going with this? I'm going off topic.
Diversity.
Okay, diversity. What was I? You need to help me. Oh my gosh. Okay.
You were talking about how they was bringing people together and how they started that the diversity center.
Yeah, the diversity center. There's so many kids who get kicked out for being LGBTQ. From their homes, and they're homeless. And so I know that they've helped a lot of students deal with that. They've helped a lot of students who are getting kicked out of Liberty University because people don't really believe that it could still happen. But I knew that when I was a student and at my college, and I knew students from Liberty, one person saying that, I am gay, but I'm afraid to come out because I get kicked out of school and I have a full scholarship right now. And I remember meeting someone saying that they were reported to the school and they were forced to go to counseling to become ungay.
By the way, those things, they don't work. The science behind conversion therapies is false. They don't work. If anything, it tortures a person, the individual, a lot more.
And they were forced to go to these counseling sessions if they wanted to still be enrolled on the campus and things like that, which is traumatizing. And most recently, Andy was telling us a story about a young girl who she was just about to graduate, and her little sister found out about a lesbian relationship she was in, and she told the parents and then called the school. And right now she was kind of, I don't know if it's expelled or that period where they're going to decide if she's going to graduate or not.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, and it's like she was 3 months from graduation, spent all this time in her studies, and because you don't agree with who she loves, you're going to rip that degree away from her. And it's coming from a place of hate and not love, which is like the opposite. Anyway, but their organization is bringing to light these difficult situations, but also bringing community together and a safe space. It's an actual space for people to go to feel safe. And people don't realize that how rare those spaces are. There's not that many here in the Bible Belt for people to feel safe. And so I remember I told you before I had went to a church once to talk to people who were uncomfortable with talking about issues like that. And I went because I thought it would be really awesome for the church to actually be a safe space for people who feel unsafe because their families kick them out and they don't have anywhere to go but the streets. And so, anyway.
But actually, that's a great segue into our last question. Again, thank you so much for letting me in your home, letting me sit on your couch, and get all of your business. So I appreciate that on all accounts. But that is a very good segue into our next question, or our last question, and it's just religion. First of all, do you affiliate with a particular religion, or do you go to a certain church?
No.
Okay.
I grew up Baptist, and when I was in college, I, of course, learned about different faiths, and I started to question everything that I learned. And I was very closed-minded and narrow-minded. I forgot to mention that was probably very important. My parents did scare that into me. So, and I was very intolerant and very prejudiced against people different from me, who thought differently from me. Or how my parents believed, who I agreed with, I should say. And so going to college and meeting people from different faiths and different lifestyles opened up my mind. And so I went through probably 2 years of, because I love people who are gay and I don't feel like they're going to go to hell, does that mean that God doesn't exist? Does God only exist for people who believe that gays are going to hell? Because I didn't understand, because I grew up around a town and a society and family who said, if you're gay, and you can only either be gay or lesbian, if you're either of those, you're going to hell. If you have a baby out of wedlock, you're going to hell. And things like that. If you do drugs, you're going to hell. So I'm like, so if I don't agree with that anymore, does God not exist for me anymore? Am I not part of, does the God not love me anymore? And I went through that phase. But then I met someone who, at my college, she was a lesbian and her father was a pastor. And she was a Christian. And it blew my mind that you could be the same. You could be a lesbian and a Christian. Like, I was like, what? And hearing her story, I was like, huh. So that got my mind working. And so I'm like, okay. So then that brought me back to religion. And it let me reconnect with God. So I may not necessarily be Baptist. Of course, like, nostalgia, I do love the Baptist church and the traditions, but I don't agree with what they say. Like, I don't believe that you have to believe in Jesus to go to heaven. I respect that because I know that it's powerful. I respect the Bible. I do feel that the Bible can be powerful. I feel it has very inspiring words, but I don't believe that it should be read literally because it was written by man. And because I've studied other religions, I've seen a lot of interconnections between the Bible and their stories and the values. And so for me, because he's different, we have different opinions on that. I've made my peace with God. I have my own special relationship with God. I find the Bible as a source of comfort, and I do go to it when I need it, for when I feel for encouragement, and when I'm feeling discouraged and sad and needing healing and things like that. But I feel that all religions have some type of truth, and I mean, I agree with all of the different religions and their different sects, but I believe there is a God, and that he's all of our God. And he's not just your God and your God, and that person may say Allah, but they're meaning the same God. You know, that's how I feel.
Okay.
So.
And you said you don't have an affiliation.
No.
Okay.
Because to me, it's just we didn't grow up in a church. Me and my family didn't. My mom would try to take us to church, and there's a lot of instances that she didn't like. There was one instance where a white girl's hair, this is what my mom told me, I was too young to remember, but my mom told me that the last time we ever went to a church was when a little white girl and a little black girl was playing together, and the little black girl touched the white girl's hair, and the white girl's mom flipped out and said, no, now we have to leave, because now we have to wash your hair. My mom said, that's okay, no, we're not going to church no more. But I was brought up to believe in God, and, you know, the same thing, you know, well, God does say that if you're a lesbian, you know, you're going to go to hell, and to me, it just sounded so weird. Like, what do you mean? If he made us, then he made me exactly who I am today. I mean, I understand we all have free will, but if he made me and he knows my future, he knows exactly what I'm doing.
Right. And if I could just interject from a Christian faith, that's always my perspective.
Yeah.
And I think this is what the challenge is, like how I sat down and had a conversation with you all, and I got to know you a little bit better and know your perspective a little better. I think sometimes, unfortunately, how do I say? Because there's even things that I have experienced in the church that I'm like, oh, I don't agree with that. I don't believe with that. But overall, oh my gosh, I love my relationship with God. I love who I'm becoming because of my relationship with God. And so my understanding is not the same as what you said. I go to church almost every Sunday and Wednesday. That if you do this, you do this, you do this, you automatically going to hell. That's not my understanding.
Yeah.
My understanding is that your faith in God, your faith in Jesus Christ, that's what sends you to heaven, not your deeds. Because none of us, when I walk out this door, before I entered your door, I probably thought some stupid stuff, had nothing to do with you, just my own stuff. And like I told you, I can't even start to put on my plate what your sin is. So I'm still dealing with the stuff in me, you know?
Yeah.
And so I believe that I'm going to heaven not because I'm perfect or I never make mistakes or I don't do this or don't do that. None of that. Because none of us can do that. But I believe because of my faith. And so I think also, I would encourage you to go to some place where maybe you will hear a less jaded gospel. You know?
Well, we have, because me and her, we talk a lot with different people of different faiths, you know, and I respect them all. You know, if you believe in God, more praise to you.
Right.
I respect you for that. I'm not going to sit there and tell you your thought is wrong. God's not real. I'm not going to tell you that, because with those two little kids back there, they believe in God.
Right.
And I support that. What do? We went out and bought them a Bible, a Lord Children's Bible.
They have two different kinds. They have, and because it brings them comfort. And my opinion, of course, different from his, is that I think it's important for children to grow up in the church. And so I believe having a faith and connected to something bigger than themselves is a comfort and a steadiness. And it helps. And everyone, my childhood, I gave one story that was kind of negative, but I did have a loving home and loving parents, and church was a big part of that. And so, like, for me, I always tear up when I hear stories like, you went to church when you were little and you grow up and you go through life and you question things, but then you always come back home type thing.
Right.
So I think that maybe it's not that church is important, but being around people who have the similar mindset of growing a relationship with God and love. Like, I equate God with love. He's all love.
Right. And just to be honest, and I just feel in here, and again, thank you. I can't thank you enough. I guess that's where I come from. When I sit here, when I think about New Day Broadcast, my intentions, whether I know everything, whether I got all the answers, whether I'll go out here and have it all understand, maybe I'll still be a little confused. Maybe I'll meet someone who's transgender and still be like, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do. Maybe I'll still be like that, and maybe not. Maybe I'm like, oh yeah, Daniel told me this is how you do. Maybe I am enlightened, but my intention is from a place of love.
Yeah.
I don't have to agree with everything. You don't have to agree with everything, because if we start breaking things down, I'm sure there'll be things we agree about and things we just polar opposites about.
We're two different individuals.
Yeah. And so, but at the core of that, there's still my love and respect for people. So that's where I came from. And you open your home out of a love and respect for people, because you could have said, absolutely not, Angel. We're not letting you go in our home. And so I do appreciate that. And I just is anything you want to leave with a final word to our listeners, viewers, whatever we call it, you guys?
Just be more open-minded and accept people for who they are. Do not allow your own biasness and your own judgments and labels and stereotypes, especially stereotypes, to get in your way of accepting somebody or loving someone. And I think that's the biggest problem right now also, and that's obviously is what you're trying to break through. It's just to love them, no matter what.
Loving unconditionally.
Yeah.
But I talk too much. But maybe a final thought is, it's because I understand what it's like to be closed-minded and to have my mind culture shock and mind blown and transition into my own person, because I haven't always been open-minded and things like that, that it's worth it to just, because for me it's hard to keep my mouth shut, to just shut your mouth and just open your ears, because I like to interject a lot while someone's talking, and then I might miss like a poignant comment or moment because I'm trying to talk and ask questions or understand. But when you're talking to someone and you know that their opinion may be different, give them a good however long that they need, where you wait until they're done and they look at you, you keep your mouth shut and you just be in the moment and really hear them and listen to them. While they're talking, let their words visualize a picture and really put yourself in their shoes. Because when I did that for the first time, it was very emotional for me, and that was my breakthrough to be a more understanding person.
Very good. Thank you. And I guess that's what they're telling me. Angel, shut up and just listen. No, they were good. They were gracious. They were very gracious. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to hear their story. And like I said, I wasn't coming here to convert. They weren't coming here to convert me. We just wanted to hear each other's story.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we just wanted to listen to each other. And I think that's so very important and what's needed in this world today. And so, like I say, every time I'm going to get up and come turn the camera off. I know it's going to look weird. But the New Day broadcast, with every new day, there still remains hope. And I just want to put that in everybody. Thank you again. I want to call you Danny. Thank you again, Danny and Claudette
Thank you for
Schomburg.
having us.
Thank you. Okay, I'm coming to turn it off.